lobby. Let's all go to the lobby, lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hello, horror hounds, and welcome to Now Slaying, an It Slays podcast production where we break down the latest and greatest in the world of horror. I'm your not-so-humble host, Colton.
I'm Rowan.
And Gill is here.
Yes, Gill is here joining us. And today on the show, we're going to be discussing Companion, which was released January 31st, 2025, exclusively in theaters. Now, Rowan, we're a month out from our look-ahead episode, so I feel like we've both shared our excitement in looking forward to this one somewhat recently. But Gill, I don't know what you're feeling about this one. Were you looking forward to Companion?
Yes, actually, I was. This is kind of like my favorite time of year. Like if a horror movie comes out for Valentine's Day.
Oh, okay. I was going to say the January dumping month where we get a bunch of garbage, or?
Well, that's kind of when they fit these like Valentine's Day movies in, like right before Valentine's Day. Like Lisa Frankenstein, I was insufferable this whole year.
Yeah.
Was like my favorite thing that came out last year. And just seeing the like trailers of this one, and also I'm a big fan of Barbarian, so I was excited about that. But I liked, I don't know, kind of the aesthetic. It looked like, you know, kind of vintagey because of like the way the robot looks, but also like the font in the backgrounds and the music. And I really like that. And then just the whole premise of it. We've all kind of seen like, you know, a lot of stuff being done with AI and how that can turn into horror and all that kind of stuff. But this one looked a bit different. This one looked kind of interesting. So yeah, I've been looking forward to this. What about you, Rowan?
Actually, I'm going to chime in real quick.
Yeah.
Is it a spoiler to mention that this movie is like a robot movie or an AI movie?
No, because it's in the trailer.
It should be, but yeah. So like once we got closer to the release date, they put out another trailer that just like fully gives away.
Yeah.
And also, like, if you look up the blurb for it, like the just sneak peek blurb, it says it's about an android.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna do like a special like spoiler warning for it, but I guess you know it's spoiled at this point. If somehow you're watching this and you don't know that Companion is about a robot or a sex bot or AI, however you want to describe it, then I guess you're spoiled. I'm sorry. Rowan, were you looking forward to this one?
Yeah, I was, you know, pretty excited for it. It looked like something I was interested. Now, you know, after we say all that, I didn't watch the second trailer. I know that the second trailer spoils everything. Yeah. So I only saw the first one that didn't reveal the twist. And I was, you know, I was very interested. Obviously, you know, kind of like Jill said, with the guys from Barbarian producing it, I was very interested. Not familiar with the director. I saw he like wrote Fred 3, which I've seen the cover of. Yeah, never watched. But, you know, I'm always interested. I mean, I'm trying to get the year started off right. So, horror movie January, you know, I'm hoping for something good, not Night Swim. That's what I'm hoping for. So,
yeah.
Knock on wood.
I doubt it will surpass that kind of masterpiece. But yeah, what about you, Colton?
Yeah, as I said on that like look ahead episode, I was looking forward to this one. Mostly based off of Sophie Thatcher, just because I thought she was really good in The Boogeyman a couple years ago. I never watched enough of Yellow Jackets to have much of an opinion on her in it. I know that's where like a lot of people know her from, but I only watched like 3 or 4 episodes of it. And then most recently Heretic. She was great in Heretic. So it's kind of like a horror scream queen on the rise, or you know, at least somebody who is dipping their toe into a lot of horror projects that have me interested to kind of watch her career. And yeah, as you guys have already mentioned, the strength of like the Barbarian producers call out in the trailer, kind of marketing it as like a rom-com, but then, you know, with this sinister tone. And I think the trailer, or at least the first one, kind of has a twist halfway through where it's like, oh, this is definitely more of like a genre horror movie that just piqued my interest. So yeah, it was the sort of thing where based off of just kind of like the pedigree of who was involved, and then also just having a very good trailer for the first one, I was interested. So were we happy to have this film keep us company? Well, before we get into that, let's roll the trailer.
We've been planning this trip for months. Remember to smile and act happy.
I'm so glad we did this.
Iris, wake up. Just smile and act happy.
40% intelligence. Wow, Josh. Oh.
Smile.
Iris.
And act happy. Just remember to smile. And act happy. Cute trick.
Companion, rated R.
Companion was written and directed by Drew Hancock, and the story is as follows. A billionaire's death sets off a chain of events for Iris and her friends during a weekend trip to his lakeside estate. Now, here on Now Slang, we like to keep things relatively spoiler-free before getting into the more in-depth spoiler-filled discussion. I did have a note here about, what we were going to discuss, or, if, the pitch of the movie, the hook of the movie, the inciting incident, if it's a spoiler or not. We've already spoiled it, so, let's just get into our spoiler-free thoughts. Rowan, what are your spoiler-free thoughts on Companion?
Well, I was just thinking about, I was like, January/February. Is this just the time that people are now going to drop sci-fi horror movies? Like, we traditionally think this is like the time of Megan.
Yeah, this is the Megan slot.
The Megan slot. So people are like, we got to take it over. And now that Megan's like a blockbuster and, going to do like the summer release, we got to be the next Megan. I mean, I thought this looks pretty good. I thought overall it looked good. Really enjoyed the music in this. Obviously, like Gill said, has this vintage vibe. We got some Bee Gees going, Turtles, little Goo Goo Dolls for the 90s heads going on. Although, I will say, as funny, as it is, because our character Iris, I don't think is a good song. So,
Whoa.
Yeah, that selection's a little bit on the nose for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Iris as a name is a little bit on the nose, but
yeah.
But Sophie Thatcher. We're missing Mike, but as Mike would say, I think mothered in this pretty hard. I thought she was really, really good in this. I wrote down his name there. I felt kind of bad for Harvey Giuliani or Julian. He plays.
I don't know how to say his name.
Yeah.
Julian? I don't know.
He plays Eli.
Yeah.
I think most people would probably know him, that he's like one of the stars of What We Do in the Shadows TV show. Entire time I watch this, I'm notorious for being like, oh, hey, it's that guy. And then it actually is nowhere near who that person is. So he came on screen, and the entire time I'm like, whoa, Chaz Bono in this movie.
Oh, God.
Do you know who I thought it was?
Who?
The guy from like the newish Spider-Man, like the best friend.
Completely wrong ethnicity,
Man.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
but,
I'm not sure if it makes us stupid and like unintentionally racist or both.
Yikes.
Yikes. Yeah, so the entire time I saw this coming out of the theater, I kept thinking to myself, I'm like, man, after Bury the Bride, I'm like, this is in one calendar year, I've seen 2 movies with Chaz Bono in it. And then, would I look at Letterboxd to see? No, I wouldn't do that.
We might see another though soon, Rowan. I think Little Bites, comes out on Shudder this month.
Nice. Chaz Bono
So,
taking over
free.
the game. No, but I thought the casting was interesting in all this. I know, off the podcast, me and Colton quickly texted just, the year of Jack Quaid. I can't escape Jack Quaid, it seems. I walk into the theater, he's on a giant poster in the doorway for Novocaine.
Yeah.
And, like Sophie Thatcher, I just think it's interesting because they're like 2 very young actors and both kind of like making, cutting their knives, sharpening their knives in the horror realm. Jack Quaid's kind of has this like shitbag persona that keeps getting casted in horror movies. And, like Colton said before, the Boogeyman, I was a pretty big fan of also. And I've enjoyed Sophie Thatcher and anything I've seen her in. So, but, I did like the science fiction twist of this. I didn't know that was the case when I went in, and when it happened, I was like, fuck yeah. Because I've said before, sci-fi horror is like kind of that Black Mirror-esque type stuff is really my jam. I really like it. And I had a good time with it. Like, I don't know, we'll gain the rating. We'll talk about whether it's like, a masterpiece. I don't know if we're like getting in those sections of the echelons, but like I thought for a January movie, I had like a pretty fun time with this one. What about you, Colton?
I feel like I'm going to be on the opposite from you guys. it's not that I like disliked the movie necessarily, but I thought it was pretty disposable overall, I guess. Like, I thought Sophie Thatcher was fine. But for me going in knowing this was quote unquote a sex bot movie, as I've heard a lot of people say online, and then seeing like the poster with obviously the white in her eyes, like her eyes rolled back sort of thing, I knew right off the bat that she was likely, you know, this robot in the movie, right? So when you go in, you kind of know that, like, it's almost like every single line of dialogue is like too clever by half. It's like, you know, oh, I was programmed to be that way, or oh, I can't control this, it's just in my programming, or, you know, there's like almost every line is kind of hinting at the fact that she's a robot. And I also think her performance is just a little bit wooden, you know, almost like intentionally so throughout, but especially in the first 40 minutes where this movie pulls an Abigail, where it's like, you know, the marketing reveals that she's a sex bot, but the movie itself keeps it under wraps for a solid 30 minutes for sure. Where similarly, Abigail, it's like, you know, it's marketed on a young, you know, ballerina vampire, and then you watch it and it's like 40 minutes before they reveal it, right? And they're kind of hinting at, oh my God, what's picking us off, that sort of thing. It just makes it kind of boring as somebody who's following kind of the horror world a little bit. I didn't hate her. She didn't irritate me as much as like a Jack Quaid in this movie. When I was watching this movie, he's supposed to be grating. He's supposed to be that like nice guy persona that we all know people like that he just sucks. But when I was watching this, I was kind of like, oh, I think there's a good reason why oftentimes he's not like the leading man. It's like he is good in like a sprinkling, or like being like that side character, like in the background, or kind of like this shitty, you know, friend that cracks jokes or whatnot. Having him as like the lead and kind of like the romantic lead alongside Sophie Thatcher, to me, just like, I thought he was too over the top all the time, and he just like irked the hell out of me. And I think that's just kind of like a lot of this movie. I feel like it's just not for me because it kind of gets into that dreaded C word that I hate so much. Campy. A lot of this, when I was watching it, I was just like, this is pretty campy, and I'm just allergic to that most of the time. What else do I have to say about it? I thought the technicals were all fine. Nothing like blew me away. You guys pointed out the music. They do have some like needle drops, I guess, but, you know, it was the sort of stuff that I would expect for this tone of movie. I thought particularly like the opening narration was pretty strong, like kind of, you know, where she's talking about the two happiest moments in her life, or when she felt like butterflies, that sort of idea. I thought that was very strong. But for, you know, a lot of the movie from then on out, I was smiling along, or like kind of like, oh, that's cute, or like laughing along. But it was just like, literally, I will remember nothing about this movie in a month other than maybe one or two choice scenes. And the movie kind of devolves into a lot of people running around in the woods, or I don't know, not being very interesting for me for a large portion of that second act. And then the third act, I would say, is actually stronger in some regards than the rest of the movie, or at least what I was hoping to get from the movie maybe a little bit sooner. So I don't know. It's something that kind of ultimately winds up being inconsequential for me, largely. It didn't kind of like nail it like I've seen some other people feel online about it. Yeah, Jill, how are you feeling on this one?
I don't know. I feel like we've had a lot of kind of those AI movies lately. Like we said, Megan was a really big one. Not quite like the same concept, but Don't Worry, Darling was like kind of teetering that.
For sure.
Exactly.
There was that Megan Fox movie that I didn't watch.
Subservience.
But you guys discussed that on the podcast.
Subservience walk, so this could run. So.
And then me and Rowan also watched, what was it? Was it just called AI? What was that movie we watched? For Now Slaying.
Is it Afraid?
Afraid. Yeah, Afraid.
Yes.
Yeah, I watched that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, you know, all things that we're kind of seeing done to death at this point. So the trailer showing everything, that second trailer, is kind of a big disappointment, because I feel like that twist would have been much more effective, because I think they do a pretty decent job of holding it in, like the secret, but it still has like hints of what it's going to be. But
if you know it, I think it's just like spotlighting it the entire time. Like it's literally like, you know, 100% she's a robot, like I said, in every line of dialogue. I think if it's something you don't know, if you're just throwing this on when it's on streaming in 2 months' time, it's like, you could probably, like, you'd have no idea for 40 minutes. But like, yeah, just when you go in knowing what it is, it's just like beating you over the head with it. Yeah.
I agree. So I don't know. We always talk about this, how nowadays they're always showing, everything in the trailer, the whole movie.
Yeah.
So that was one issue I had with it. But again, going back to that AI being done, I think this is a pretty good rendition of it. Like, I liked the concept of a sex robot. I thought that was really cool. And especially a sex robot kind of in love, and just seeing love through the lens of these robots who most of the time they care more about like their partners than the partners, like the actual humans do. Which is interesting. Like, Iris is very romantic and she's really in love with Josh, and I really liked those scenes, and I liked the flashbacks to like the simulated memories. So I really liked that. We didn't talk about Lucas Gage, who plays Patrick, who I thought was really him and Iris for me, kind of ran the show. I didn't give a shit about Josh's character, and I don't know, everyone else was all right, but
yeah,
it's
Cage, weird. The rest of the cast kind of just filters in and out throughout the movie. Like, like Sergey is like pretty important near the beginning, or like Kat is kind of like brought up at certain points in the movie for like sexual tension, or like will they, won't they? But it's like all of the characters just kind of filter through when they're needed for like the immediate scene, and then they're just vanish.
I kind of wish they had more of Cat, or like Megan Siri that plays her, like, because I know we weren't very hot on It Lives Inside when that came out, but I thought she was like the real bright point of that film. Like, I think she's a pretty good actress, and I almost thought that she kind of, in the little she was in this, that she kind of outshined everyone else that she was in a scene with.
She was playing that like wine drinking, smiling friend archetype very well, where it's like she kind of knew what sort of movie she is. Her performance, like, once again, like all these performances are a little bit larger than life, but she kind of felt like, I don't know, the bratty kind of bitchy friend a little bit. Like, when I was watching it, I was like, oh, she's doing a good job at this.
Yeah. No Chaz Bono, but she's pretty good.
Chaz Bono was great in this movie. One of my favorite parts. I also really like the nickname that he had for her. It took me like a minute to get it, because my husband's a computer programmer, and he's always going beep boop, beep boop. And I thought that was a funny nickname. But you talked about how this is kind of like Black Mirror, and I totally agree. It's like a very long Black Mirror episode. But also, I've been rewatching the first season of White Lotus, as well as I watched both seasons of Why Women Kill. And this is very much like that, with the formula of, at the beginning, you know that someone's going to die, and then they show you how they got there to the end, and it kind of loops back. Like, she says the same thing, like, the best day of my life was when I met Josh and I killed him, or whatever. So if that's a spoiler, fuck me. I can't do this anymore.
Rowan could do a little bit of trimming, yeah.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't even say that's really a spoiler. She says that in the first 2 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, for me, it was just a strong piece of opening narration. That's why when I mentioned it, I just kind of tiptoed around the specifics of it.
I mean, the fucking trailer literally shows her. Like, that second trailer, I have seen it now. Like, it literally shows her, like, murdering people in the second trailer, like, covered in blood.
Do they also have the line in the trailer?
No, I don't think so.
Wouldn't surprise me.
I mean, it's quite. I was gonna say, it's funny because we keep saying Black Mirror, but it's like, is this kind of unfair to all like sci-fi horror-ish films that they just automatically? It's like, oh, this is like Black Mirror. And then I feel like they're put up to this like unreal expectation.
Well, I think before even like a lot of the Black Mirror episodes that would have dealt with this, Ex Machina exists, right? Ex Machina ran so all of these other movies could crawl, right? Like that movie is far more successful than most of these. So when I watch something like this, it's like, is Sophie Thatcher as good as, oh my God, I forget her name now, but the woman in Ex Machina, who most of the time I know her name. And oftentimes I find when I watch these sort of AI robot movies, the answer is no. And then
I'll correct that Star Trek First Contact ran so these could all crawl, because that's when Data got his feelings chip, and he was an android with feelings, so and emotion.
Yeah, I mean,
Nerd,
not quite
nerd
the same
corner.
as the whole sex bot aspect of it, but or at least not from what I've seen of Star Trek TNG. But anyways, we keep interrupting Jill. I don't know if she has any more to say about this in the spoiler-free section.
Not really. I didn't say anything about Sophie Thatcher. I just want to say she's beautiful in this movie. She's amazing. And I love the makeup, the hair, the outfits. If Mike were here, I know he'd eat it up too. Yeah, just that like kind of 60s, 70s aesthetic, but it's in like modern day.
So you would order one of these robots?
Absolutely.
And would you recommend that people check this one out in theaters?
Okay, before... Yeah,
I thought you were going to say, would you recommend the robot?
Isn't there a Black Mirror episode called Be Right Back where like the woman's husband dies and she goes out and gets like basically a sex robot of him?
Yes. I mean, it eventually builds up to that, but yes, that's within like the first, I think it's like 3 or 4 Black Mirror episodes, if not right at the beginning of season 2.
Yep.
It's when Black Mirror was still like excellent with pretty much every episode. So that's the thing when it's like,
damn, the hot take.
You compare almost every horror sci-fi trope to Black Mirror because they did really have like a good run of like a couple of seasons there where they pretty much dipped their toes into almost every horror sci-fi concept that you could do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like if you've been watching this stuff for, a decade, I guess, at this point, it's all going to feel pretty familiar.
But yeah, I would recommend to go check it out in the theater if it's kind of your thing. If you are interested in sci-fi, horror, if you're interested in going on a nice little romantic date with someone, taking them to see a little Valentine's Day horror flick, could be fun. If not, then maybe wait for like streaming. But
Yeah.
I thought it was a decent time. What about you, Colton?
Yeah, I agree. I think this is like a good date night movie. It's the sort of thing where it's like, would I recommend it? It's like, sure, if you're the sort of person that's going to want to seek out a movie in theaters around Valentine's Day and like horror, you could probably do a lot worse. Is this going to like change your life? Not in my opinion, but it's probably worth checking out in theaters. If not, check it out on Amazon Prime probably in like 2 months' time. What about you, Rowan?
Yeah, I mean, I'd recommend. I think I'd almost be higher on it than both of you guys. Like, when I came out of it, I had a pretty good time. I was like, yeah, I kind of thoroughly enjoyed this. Do I still think it's, like, pretty disposable? Like, yeah. Now, I will say, like, even though, I'm the one saying, well, it's not really, the trailer spoiled the twist, all that stuff. I didn't realize that till after the film.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, the twist actually worked for me because I didn't know what this was about. I just kind of went in blind, and I didn't really remember anything from the first trailer. But yeah, I think if you go in, I think people enjoy, like you guys said, a good date night film. Maybe not as crazy as I think the hype about it was, so maybe go in with that kind of thought, because I remember seeing a lot of discussion of like, oh, this online people are like, this looks like it's going to be just like blood and guts everywhere, and it's going to be like wild and funny and gore, like violent, and I think it like kind of overplayed in the trailers of how wild it was going to be. I think people saw producers of Barbarian and then were like, oh my God. And I mean, I think there's a reason that, I know I was reading that Zach Krager, that's like originally was going to be his follow-up film that he directed, and then he passed on it and they gave it to someone else. But yeah, I mean, I think I have a pretty strong recommend. I think for a January film, this is pretty strong for stuff we normally see in January. As good as that, that is.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. It's just largely when the movie is marketed like from the producers of Barbarian. A lot of people know Barbarian as being like subversive.
Yeah.
It does do this kind of rom-com will they, won't they at the beginning of the movie that's also like creepy, like tinged with like, oh, this guy is clearly not well, and kind of subverts your expectations where all that's going. Plus with like a completely like mid-movie shakeup. Like,
yeah.
Barbarian is very clever and very subversive and does, what it does very well. This, I was thinking, it was like, oh, there's something that we don't know that's going to happen in this movie that's, the trailer is hiding. And, you know, that's not really the case with this one. It's, you know, it's not a barbarian in that regard, at least. But yeah, it seems like this is something that all of us would recommend, at least checking it out in theaters. Rowan a little bit higher on it than Gill and I think. And with that, it's time to cut to the spoiler discussion for Companion. We are now in our spoiler discussion for Companion, so if you've not seen Companion, it's time to tune out and come back once you've seen the movie, or keep listening if you simply don't care. Gill, you were kind of spoiling the flashback sequences in the movie, which I think they're good. I think the movie kind of relies on cutting away or flashback gags a little bit too much, where it almost feels like a Family Guy episode at sometimes. But I will say, the one that you were kind of hinting at, the Halloween one, was one of the better ones in the movie for sure.
I love that.
So maybe speak to that. Yeah, talk about the cutaway gags or, you know, the flashback sequences. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the Halloween one, it is a little campy, is a little goofy, but when he's wearing his, Patrick is wearing his Dracula costume, I love it. It's a great Dracula costume, and I love how, like, kind of dorky the AI robot people are. You know, because they're the ones that are having the flashback, and it's like nervous first love moments, and he's like eating that carrot in the ranch, and he stepped on the other guy's tail, and you know, and then they fell in love. I really love that. And I also like the first one in the supermarket, because it was kind of funny, and
the close-ups like on their faces in the supermarket where they're both like leering at each other and smiling and whatnot, and how it kind of like loops back throughout the movie, and like obviously it feels more menacing. I thought it felt menacing right at the beginning because it was just very creepy. I couldn't imagine, like, you know, meet cuting with a romantic partner in the grocery store and then staring at her that way. Like, you know, you just look like a serial killer. But I did think it like kind of set the tone of the movie. Like, once again, that campy kind of over the top tone. Mm-hmm. I liked how with the Halloween one they loop it back in for like a gag with Jack Quaid's character, and they go as far as like having obviously Patrick step on Jack Quaid's tail, but then that they finish the night like dancing with each other, like doing the choreographed dance moves and stuff.
That got a good laugh out of my theater.
Yeah, my theater like cackled at it as well. I thought it was pretty cute. Patrick being an AI, obviously, I don't know, is this revealed in the trailers? I never watched the second trailer, but in the movie, in the movie, it's definitely treated as a reveal. It's kind of like at that moment where they're all digging into the safe and, you know, divvying up the split of the $10 million or whatever it is. I can't remember, $4 million, whatever it is. Did you guys guess beforehand that Patrick was an AI?
No, I had no idea. Okay. I don't know. I should have known, because, like, you know, there's so much to do with that second gag that they should have it. But yeah, I had no idea, and it actually like shocked me. And that's why I liked Patrick's character so much, because for most of or a good part of the movie, I thought he was a human, and I would love to rewatch it and see if, you know, I could spot the actual maybe like hints that he's not a human.
Yeah, I didn't catch on to it either, just because this sort of movie, when I was going into it, I thought it was just going to be a lot smaller scale anyways. I thought essentially this movie was going to wind up being something more like, let's say, like an Invisible Man or something, where it's just kind of like more so like two characters and like their dynamics, like more so Jack Quaid and Sophie Thatcher and kind of them butting heads against each other. I thought it was going to be more like, you know, a little bit more biting, kind of like the romantic aspect of it, I guess, rather than just more general about this guy being a bad, nice guy, kind of, you know, using a lot of toxic relationship tactics. I thought it was just going to be a little bit more specific. But no, I didn't guess necessarily that Patrick was a bot either. Just once again, just because of the scale of the movie, I just wasn't expecting it whatsoever. I thought he was pretty good though. Like his performance didn't like immediately feel robotic to me when I was watching it, and I think for a lot of the movie it kind of has to feel that way, because, you know, the whole third act of like what happens with his character hinges on the fact that you are buying into that he genuinely loves Eli for the movie. You know, it's like this romantic montage of their great times together, you know, culminating in, you know, committing suicide with the shock the shock prod or whatever, you know, the taser. So you kind of have to buy into that a little bit, I find. I thought it was like pretty cheesy, but I don't know. I kind of liked him as a character. I was hoping for him to turn into like more like T2 Terminator Patrick a little bit quicker in the movie, I think, than what he ultimately does. But
I thought he was pretty good though at being like menacing once they turned the aggression up on him. Like, I was like, oh shit, like, you know, he's about his business, a little serious here. And like, it was a good flip. I just think for the actor in general, because obviously this whole first half, Patrick's, just kind of, he's just kind of wavy, kind of, cooking and very lighthearted. And, I thought it was cool that, at least that guy got to do that in the front half and then almost be a totally different character and really kind of turn into like the secondary villain for a while.
Yeah, he's almost like a co-lead, like he's like the third leg kind of in like the the second half of this movie.
And I thought he was fantastic.
Jack Quaid, how did you guys feel about him? Did you like him in like this leading role? Like, did you feel like obviously you're supposed to hate this character, obviously he's supposed to be dorky and abusive and shitty, he's supposed to be a bad guy, but like, did you enjoy following him or like seeing him on screen this much? Because for me, I just I don't know what it was. I like him in like pretty much everything else I've seen him in. This was just like too much Jack Quaid to me. Where like by the time we got like his O-face jump scare, I was like, all right, I'm just out. Like I don't need any more Jack Quaid in this movie. And that was only like probably 20 minutes in.
Yeah, I agree. To me, it was all really heavy on him, and I just wanted more Iris, more Patrick, more anybody. I didn't really like him.
Okay. I didn't like him, but I was like, I just felt like they accomplished the goal. I should want this guy to die by the end of it. And I mean, I'll give it to him. He, like I said, he plays a shitbag real well, like hard incel vibes going on. And I don't know how much of a compliment to Jack Quaid that is, that you play a great incel, but yeah.
How do you guys feel about the intelligence slider on Iris? That was like another moment in the audience that got a big laugh out of, my audience, where it was like she goes into her programming or into the app that controls her and reveals that her intelligence is only set to 40%. So
that was
I thought that was pretty good.
Sorry.
Oh, was it? Well, fuck. See, like that's the thing. It's like, yeah, like I don't remember that. I liked that in the movie. Like I was like, oh, okay, that's cute. Like he has, quote unquote, a dumb girlfriend, so he could always, overpower her or argue with her, win, the arguments, the points of the relationship. Yeah. I thought it was interesting. But when they do bump it up to 100%, I understand in the movie they're like, oh, she's supposed to be like an Ivy League graduate or whatever. It was still like, I didn't think she was actually like that smart. I guess there's a couple of moments, there's the whole car starting thing, but the fact that escaping this desolate cabin in a car is like your third option, like you got to think through two other options before you get like probably the most natural option of like, oh, can I just drive away from here? I don't know, it was just kind of, she still didn't feel like super smart to me. Maybe that's a commentary on the actual robotics company in this, but
I was gonna
what
say,
do you guys feel about that? Yeah.
To me, like, I get it, and that was obviously a way for them to, like, put more sequences into the movie to make it interesting. But I think it also kind of shows, like, how a computer works, which she actually is. Like, you go through different logic sequences until you get the right one. So that's kind of what I thought of it.
And, I mean, we should let listeners know that we're nothing like that. We put Jill's intelligence setting up to 60, so, we let it go higher than that.
Dang.
Yeah.
God, I'm afraid at what 100 looks like if that's the case.
I'm gonna drive away.
No, but I mean, to me, like, I thought it was a good gimmick. The only thing I kind of wish is when we do get them, like, putting it down to 0, when we get the scene. I feel like most.
Oh, that's the scene of the movie.
Yeah, everyone's curious about because they tease it in the trailer, and you're like, what's going on? But I kind of feel like I would have liked them to explore the 0 setting a little more, because other than put your hand over the
Rowan wanted more torture. He wants women to be portrayed in movies as even more dumb.
I feel like that would be offensive.
It might be, maybe
in multiple ways.
I just like, to that I understood that it was just like she's like a robot.
Rowan wants Sophie Thatcher to be a mindless automaton for half of this movie that Jack Quaid just has his way with.
Rock, fire.
What did you guys think of that, like, titular scene?
Well, that's the best scene in the movie to me. Like, I really like a lot of it. I think, like, once again, her acting is very strong, like the slow burn of the candle. Like, this is obviously the scene at the dinner table where essentially he's like, I'm going to make you feel pain, and, orders her to put her hand over, like, the lit candle. Melts her arm, catches fire, and all that. Like, I thought that was a great scene, culminating in the the headshot where, you know, she pulls the trigger on herself, but she has that like final moment right before she does it where she's still being disobedient and saying no. You know, I thought that was a really effective scene in the movie. That was, you know, it was tense, but also because I also thought like possibly she was like leaning into it, like she was still really smart and like kind of playing along with the aspect, like she was burning her own hand, but she was gonna turn the gun on him, was kind of like how I thought it was going to go. So that specific scene did subvert my expectations a little bit, or go in a way I didn't quite expect.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, it kind of did everything I'd want a scene like that to do, where I wasn't sure where it was going. I wasn't sure how much Patrick was gonna be used in it, or what it was going to do. I kind of thought that he might kind of face them off a little more in that scene. But yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting. Also, I was like, oh, maybe he's going to kind of get like a little three-way going here or something. He's going to just make them both fall in love with him.
I would have liked that personally.
Of course you would. Of course. But like Colton said, I also really enjoyed that candle scene, just like seeing the skin kind of melts, and I really liked a lot of the effects in this movie too, and like all the kind of gory things they did, like the electric corkscrew. My mouth just dropped when I watched it. I was like, oh no. And
did you guys see that coming?
No.
Like,
okay.
I did.
Yeah,
I did the entire
the
movie
minute
too, yeah.
The minute they use it at the beginning, and then the camera just looks at it for
well, they do that twice in the
Yeah.
movie, actually. Yeah. So I was like, okay, you've shown it twice, the third time's going to be in Jack Quaid's throat.
It's like Rocky Horror when they show like the electric no, that's Evil Dead. No, they both have them. The electric knife, right?
Yeah.
Same thing.
Very similar movies.
Yep. But I also really enjoyed like Patrick like dressing up as the sheriff, and also like the two tech guys from the company, and like when they recognize Patrick and all that stuff. I thought that was a really cool and fun addition to the movie.
Yeah, that's the part of the movie that's like working a little bit more for me, where there's the idea of like you're changing your identity, you're changing your voices, you're speaking in German, all that sort of stuff. Like that was like, okay, you're making good on kind of like this AI robot idea now, and the fact of like the guys from the company coming to recover the footage and how that all plays out. I enjoyed a lot of the specifics there in the third act, just when the movie was a little bit more it's still not mean, I guess, or like it's still not like overly graphic really for a lot of it. Like there's usually like one shot that's like, okay, that's kind of gory, but the rest of it is usually fine. But when we're at that point in the movie, I was very much enjoying just, you know, how everything was playing out, or like Patrick adopting the police persona. You know, all that was great.
I was gonna say, I like the police scene also. Like, I thought that was great. Just to show that brutality of Patrick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then also like this was like probably the one scene in the movie where I thought her intelligence actually was like quite appropriate, where she thought about changing her voice settings to German to basically get around the one part of her programming that says she can't lie for whatever reason, where it's like, I don't know, I feel like there would be a way, especially with like the hacking and you know the mods that he can implement to get around that. But you know, I did like the idea of like turning the German, telling the truth, but the police officer basically not being able to speak German whatsoever. Get around that loophole. That was quite clever.
So do you think this all could have been avoided if you just didn't argue about giving robots cuts of money? All right, if you guys have a robot, are you paying it a couple $1 million?
I mean, if you got that much money, why not?
Sure, we'll put it in the joint bank account.
The joint bank account.
Another tool used by man to oppress women.
For sure, yeah. The only other point that I have here in the spoiler-filled discussion is more so of like a plot hole aspect of the movie, where it's kind of like the handling of Sergey in the movie, where
great mustache.
Great mustache, great like kind of just performance for the first 30 minutes or whatever. Obviously like a bit of a sleazebag, or everyone is thinking that he's involved in shady shit, but he himself says he's involved in shady shit when like Patrick is talking to him, and basically he's talking about how like his hands are soaked with blood, or like this sort of house doesn't come easily, he's had to do a lot of things. And I'm like, okay, so it's like the guy is admitting that he's involved in shady stuff. You're in like this crazy mansion that's obviously millions of dollars. And then the movie is like, oh, by the way, he's just a nice guy who was, made his money on like a sod farm, or owned it, like a family sod farm. And I'm just like, okay, but like that's not consistent with like what we were literally shown earlier in the movie, and he has been explicitly so. And also like even Kat has, had moments throughout the movie where it kind of hinted at him not being like a good boyfriend and stuff leading up to that. So it's just like, I don't think it's like bad on the audience and even on Jack Quaid's character to assume this guy is into shady shit when he says he's into shady shit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It was a weird point, like plot hole.
I took it he was just
like,
trolling. He was just kind of a troll.
So he's just lying to this robot guy, I guess. Does he know he's a robot?
Well, I kind of took it that they only knew that Iris was the robot.
I don't think so. I think they know Patrick's the robot.
Oh, yeah, I guess.
For the whole movie,
when they turn Patrick off, they're like,
no one's
oh,
surprised by it. Yeah, and then,
Yeah,
basically there's that whole scene of where, like, Eli's kind of like, oh, you're, like, robot shaming me because I have an earlier version and stuff like that, right? Or you've done it in the past, right? Like, that idea is in the movie, it's in the text, so it's like they all know he's a robot, so I don't know. It was just a weird, like, hiccup for me when I was watching it, because I was like, there was a reason I thought Sergey was a bad guy, and I was like, oh, because he's literally said he's a bad guy. He, comes onto Iris, sexually assaults her, and the fact that, Kat also said that he's not a good boyfriend, implying that he's, abusive in some ways or whatnot. So I was like, there was a lot of reasons in this movie to think Sergey's not a good guy.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
That was my issue too with there's some plot points in the movie that didn't make sense. They're kind of minor. Like for me, it was when Iris was trying to, I don't know, figure out how to get away and all this kind of stuff. There were some things that happened. I can't remember exactly what, but it just didn't make sense. I remember it like sitting not well with me when I was watching it. That was the only kind of criticism I had for the movie though, besides like showing too much in the trailer. First thing, we got to talk about my themes, right?
Oh God.
Here we go. I just want to...
They're very subtle in this
Theme
movie.
corner.
Very, very subtle.
Well, I just want to talk about it because Alien Romulus came out this year, and I just rewatched it. And I really liked, and all science fiction does this, like it shows how we treat AI or robots or androids if we know they're not human, but they look human, and we treat them like with brutality. But I really liked the way that this movie, Companion, and Alien Romulus did that. They were very successful in making their robots very human-like, and like I said earlier, more human than the actual humans. So I think that's a success on the sci-fi part.
I think that's like almost always the point of AI in the movies though, isn't it? Like it's I'm thinking of all these like Ex Machina, that's the point, Data, that's the point in Star Trek.
It's one of the points, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's successful, I guess, in like humanizing. Yeah. It does a good job of that. I mean, then AI or bot or sex bot, whatever, is literally the protagonist. So if you're not empathizing with her or sympathizing with her or like rooting for her, then that would be a very bad step on the behalf of the filmmakers. Yeah.
The other thing I noticed was that when Iris comes to meet all of the friends at this house, she's nervous, and just like her general demeanor, I have like very bad social anxiety. And I saw a lot of myself in Iris, and how when she gets there, she like immediately leaves to go take a shower and stuff like that. Yeah. And she's just worried about what everyone thinks of her. I just thought that was really relatable, and I liked that part of her character.
Yeah, I thought that was well handled as well. And like, kind of like his response was like, a little toxic, but not completely. Like, he was doing like the whole like pretty girl should smile thing, but on like a lesser, a lesser note. He didn't explicitly say that. But, he was kind of like listening to her fears, but also not really, and not being like basically like, this is part of your programming. Like, you can get over this. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I like that as well. I'm someone who's socially awkward as well, so I can relate to that to some degree as well. If I'm not at my job, I can't be that. But, in my personal life, I'm a little bit more like Iris as well, where it's like, I'd rather just grab a drink and sit in the corner and chat with a few people around me than, be mingling.
Yeah.
And with that, I think let's get into reviewing this. So if you're new to the podcast, our review rubric is nay, okay, yay, or slay. Gill, I want to know what you would give Companion.
I'm number one. I am going to give Companion a very strong yay because it's definitely something that I'll probably get on physical media when it comes out. I did rag on like the trailer showing a lot and a couple of plot points that didn't really make sense to me, but to me that's very minor, and I had a very good time watching it. I thought it was funny. I thought it was clever, and so far, I mean, January. It's February today, but like, I think this is a banger, and I think it's a highlight of the year probably for me so far. What do you think, Rowan?
I don't know if I give it like that high, but I'm also going to give it like a yay. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was a good time. I was going to say it's kind of asinine to me to say, if you can avoid the spoilers, it'll be even more fun because, well, in order to hear me say that, you listen to this entire episode. But I mean, if you did get that opportunity, I think you had a good time with it. I think for like something that's very light fare, I think you use the best word, Colton, disposable. Like for something just disposable that's fun that, you could watch with people or your partner or whatever, like just throw something on that everyone would enjoy. Like I think this would be quite enjoyable. It's funny enough, it's got enough like kind of, gore or horror to it and that Black Mirror vibe that I think everyone would, get down with it. So yeah, I'm going to give it a yay also. What about you, Colton?
Yeah, this one's going to be an okay from me. It's the sort of thing where it's just, I found it a little bit too campy. I thought it was too blunt in some of its messaging. It was a little stupid in some regards. But I did still have a lot of fun with it. I did think it was very much enjoyable in the latter half when kind of like the gig was up. We know that Iris is a robot and not every single line of dialogue is being clever and pointing at that idea. Or, I did think Sophie Thatcher was a little bit more natural in the latter half where she's supposed to be selling, like, she is a robot, but she's also a human, where in the first half there's, little hints of it, obviously, where Gill was talking about, the social anxiety going to the party where it's, she's acting more human. But there's also just a lot of robot in her performance where I can just tell she was directed to be a little bit more wooden or like, sit a little bit more upright or, the way she's describing herself. The weather gag, aspects like that where it's like she still feels a little bit too robotic to me. And we really need to stop kind of not so much ruining the movie in the trailer because, you're never going to stop that, but revealing the twist of these horror movies, that's not like the 15-minute inciting incident, like the 40-minute reveal, because it very much like anybody who's going to see this based off the strength of the trailers is going to be bored for 40 minutes of the movie because they're so far ahead of where the movie is. And that's how I felt for a lot of this, where I was just like, the movie isn't clever enough in its other ways to kind of keep me engaged for the first 40 minutes. And then for the last half of the movie, there was aspects of like wandering around in the woods with people that, I was like, I'm fine with these characters, but I'm here for Sophie Thatcher. Right. Like, so yeah, it was just okay for me. I had fun. I laughed a lot, but it's the sort of thing, like I said earlier in the podcast, it's very disposable for me. And, Jack Quaid should just stay for now in supporting roles, I think. I don't know. I found him too irritating. Maybe Novocaine will change my mind on that, but I very much didn't like seeing so much Jack Quaid in this movie, ultimately, in the end. And if you're not doing so already, you can follow us on our socials at It Slays Podcast. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Slasher, Letterboxd, Threads, Bluesky. If there's a social media, we're probably there at It Slays Podcast. And if you want to help support the show financially, like our horror hounds, Holly, Nicholas, Patrick, Mark, Steven, Joy, Dan, Brian, Trevor, and James, gain access to the Patreon-exclusive show Stream Screams, hosted by Gill, and get episodes of the main show 48 hours early. Be sure to head on over to patreon.com/itslays podcast and choose whatever tier works best for you. Rowan, are we putting some Goo Goo Dolls on the playlist?
Iris, just have Iris rocking at the top of the playlist.
Absolutely.
Goo Goo Dolls.
But if you want to follow a horror playlist, you can follow ours on Spotify. It's the It Slays Podcast Horrific Playlist. If you have any problems finding it, you can go to any of the social media that Colton just mentioned. Go into the bio, click the Linktree link that's there. It'll take you right to the spot. We upload scores or licensed music from iconic horror movies we review, or just horror movies we love. So give it a follow. We update it regularly. And get your spooky music on, because why the hell not?
And next time on the show, we're going to be doing Heart Eyes, I think. That's coming out next week. Pretty wide release by the looks of things, so
Presents broke my heart, so we couldn't do presents, so it'd have to be Hard Eyes.
Yeah, it looks like Hard Eyes at this point. So, yeah, we'll be back for some more Valentine's Day themed horror. And with that, I think that about wraps things up for this episode. So until next time, I'm Colton.
I'm Rowan.
Bye, it's Jill.
And as long as you keep listening, we'll keep slaying.